Skip it up and that up. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Rich of Review Tech USA, and this woman has a nice set of melons. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the game you are looking at today is Splatterhouse for the TurboGrafx 16. This was originally an arcade game that was released in 1988 and was ported over to the TurboGrafx 16 in 1990. As you can see from the screen, it's a horror-based action platformer, and it's a lot of fun and does offer a decent challenge. My only complaint is due to the fact that this is an arcade port, you could beat the entire game in about 20 minutes. But I have so much fun with it, I could play through it time and time again, so if you're a collector, pick this up for the original TurboGrafx 16, or you could get it on the Wii Virtual Console. I strongly recommend it. It's a classic. You can't go wrong with Splatterhouse. So that crazy Michael Pachter is at it again, but this time I actually agree with him. He is dismissing all the anti-used game rumors about the PlayStation 4, saying that the unnamed industry source must have been a monkey that I want to spank. He goes on to say it's just a rehash of that old rumor and the recent one about the Xbox 720. The consumer backlash from blocking secondhand games would be huge. And if you see my other videos on used games, the comments that people leave back it up. People will be very angry if used games were blocked from next-gen consoles. And he goes on to say that quashing the used game market would only benefit larger publishers such as EA and Activision slightly. The only way this could work is if Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all came together to block the used game market. But Pachter believes that the three firms aren't evil enough to do it together. Beyond the consumer backlash, Pachter said that GameStop would be in a rage. They would be the biggest potential loser if the used game market was quashed, and would just not carry the next-gen console if it did not allow used games to be played on it. And GameStop is way too big of a retailer for either Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo to ignore. And if Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo's next-generation system was not sold at GameStop stores, either of those three companies would be devastated sales-wise. Look, Pachter has said a lot of stuff in the past I totally don't agree with, but this time I totally do agree with him. People, including myself, can't afford to buy every game at $60. And unlike Steam, if Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo had the power to stop the used game market, they would not sell games via digital distribution at affordable prices like Steam does. Hell, you already see that stuff now on Xbox Live. Some older titles for the Xbox 360 are downloadable on Xbox Live, and they go for 4 or 5 times as much on Xbox Live than they would at GameStop. On top of that, yesterday, the thing that was a big red flag to me, and I forgot to talk about it in my previous video, is the fact that they would want the PS4 constantly connected to the internet. Ubisoft tried this DRM tactic before with their PC games, and it failed miserably. So for Sony to attempt this after it's been proven not to work would be ridiculous, and I doubt the PS4 is going to have to be online for you to play games. Now add in the fact that GameStop would not sell a system that didn't play used games, and that physical media is in its twilight anyway and is going to fade away in a few years. It would be a complete waste of time for Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo to go through all this work to prevent used games, when in a relatively short amount of time, used games are not going to be an issue anyway. So what's your take on this? Do you agree with Pachter and I and think that Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft won't attempt to stop the used game market? Or do you think that even with the backlash that would come from consumers and GameStop that they will still attempt it anyway? Make sure to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe, and if you have an interesting news story, make sure to send me a link via private message either on G2P or YouTube, and if I use the story, I will shout you out in the video and put a link to your channel in the description. That I want to spank.